Hey everybody, welcome back to the David Gutman podcast, CryoCon 2025 edition. I am finishing, I guess this is now going to be my 12th or 11th podcast in the last 2 days, and I am going out on a high note with Lars Lofty Lofstrand.
Yeah, that's it.
What's the Lofty for?
It's short for Lofstrand. That's just a nickname my buddies came up with when I was a surfer, Lofty Lofstrand.
Oh, you were a surfer.
And it changed to Softy because, sometimes they said I was all soft.
Lofty the Softy, there you go. Well, so in prepping for this, I went back and I watched a bunch of your Cadillac Confidential little 2 to 5 minute clips, which got me thinking about. I remember I mentioned my Coffee with Pod stuff with you, to you too, and it's kind of the similar kind of thing. You actually had that idea before I did.
Yeah.
So well, how can we stop doing it? How can I was like, those are really good.
Everybody asked me to do them. Do you know why I don't anymore?
Why?
I changed car and I've just got to put the holder. It's that simple. I've got to put the phone holder on and stopping me doing it. It's crazy, but I should do it. And I enjoy it. I enjoy getting people to think differently or think out of the box because we don't really think as people. So.
Well, first of all, I have to start by giving you, you and Kelly and everybody else just a huge compliment. I've been to 2 other, sort of wellness biohacking type conferences in the last 6 weeks, and this blew both of them away.
Thank you.
Even Bryant Johnson's Don't Die. This was just way better.
Appreciate it.
The content was better. The exhibitors were better. Much broader set of things. I mean, I was just like, wow. And I can only imagine how much bigger his team is than how you guys did it. So what was that process like? I mean, this is now the 5th year you guys have done this, right?
Yeah. Look, it's getting easier every year, but it's definitely organized chaos,
Right.
It's just a process of putting out fires, and they increase as you get closer to the show. And then on show day, obviously, anything can happen. But it's just about staying positive and, looking at the solution, not at the problem. So that helps.
So you've been a serial entrepreneur. You've had, I think when I was watching one of the podcasts you were on, maybe 8 or 9 different businesses throughout your career. I think we're similar
27.
age. 27 businesses?
Yeah, 27.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And so were your folks entrepreneurs? Like, did you always know you wanted to do your own thing, or?
I've always been a bit of a trader, a bit of a hustler. And I remember at school, I used to sell sandwiches, my sandwiches. My mom made such good lunch. I got it to make me double because I'd sell my sandwiches, for tuck shop money, what we call tuck shop. I don't know what you call that here, but you call that a tuck shop?
No.
We call it a tuck shop. It's like a little store sells, chips.
Like
and
a
Coke.
convenience store?
Yeah, kind of. But at the school,
Oh, okay.
You can buy it from the school.
Okay,
so
yeah.
You might call it a cafeteria. It's not really a cafeteria, but it's kind of like a mini shop,
Okay.
A mini store. So, yeah.
Well, so there wasn't your folks. It was just you were just wired that way.
My dad's pretty entrepreneurial. He ran his own business. He ran a big engineering company in South Africa. But but he stayed with one company. I kind of jumped. I'm very ADD, so I get bored very quickly. I want to move on to the next thing. I like the process of building. So yeah.
Well, so speaking of building, maybe talk a little bit about having 27 different businesses. I think I've had 13, so that you're 2x me. How do you think about building a team and what you look for in the people that you want on your team?
That's what I used to do. So I was trained as a profiler out of a company in Waco, Texas. We did psychological profiling for job fit. So, I've got quite a lot of experience with job fit. And I think that is the key for most businesses. It's people. If you employ the right people, they look after the business. If you look after your employees, they'll look after the business. But yeah, I think that's probably the most important part of the business is, finding the right people to execute what it is that you need to do, and it's not always easy. I mean, what is the statistic? 63% of people are in businesses or in jobs they don't want to be on, So if you consider that half your waking hours is spent working, imagine how unhappy you are if, half your life you're not happy with where you're at work. You obviously take that at home with you, You can't compartmentalize that so well. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
Well, sort of. It's funny. I have a 25-year-old daughter, and she's, I begged her not to go to college. I'm like, I'll give you the money. Just don't waste your time. I just don't think college is a particularly good return on investment these days. you can get a much better education on YouTube University than you can.
Yeah, I agree with that.
At Harvard.
Yeah.
And so she didn't listen to me. It worked out fine. She got a good first job at a school where she did learn a lot, not so much in school, but she did learn a lot in her first job. And then I helped her transition to her next job. And she's, not been happy at either of them. And it's because I think that my advice to her and my guidance to her now is the most important thing where you go to work next is who you work for, the individual that you work for. And if you like that person, respect that person, admire that person's abilities, and then you feel that person is willing to make an emotional investment in you and your development, that if you can find that, it won't matter what industry you're in, it won't matter what job function you do. Because my experience is, if I like the person I'm doing it for, what I'm doing isn't as important. Now, not forever, right? But for a good while, I could be happy digging ditches if I was digging ditches for someone who if I had to dig ditches for Elon Musk, I think I could probably be okay with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what do you think about, trying to create the right environment that people would want to work for you?
Well, your environment's very important. I think the environment you're in, makes you happy on the job or not, and happiness on the job definitely gets you to perform, a lot better. I think that's a simple answer for it.
Well, when I was watching your presentation on the first day, you made I forget exactly what you had drawn up there, but basically you were talking about how much less important you might think the actual skills are than the attitude.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about that in terms of again, you're trying to build your team and you need people to wear a bunch of hats and maybe they don't have the skills that are necessary. I mean, how do you look at solving a problem like that and the people you might bring on?
Well, so what I shared was, just to recap on it, was, I'll ask a class, what makes up success, get them to define success. And then I talk about a Harvard Business School study done on success, and they found that there were two fundamental things. So if success was a door, there's two hinges that open the door to success, and the one is attitude, and the other one is skills. Which one do you think we use the most?
I think attitude is way more important. Yeah.
Okay, so much more important. So we know that logically, but what are the things we use to hire people? What do we tend to look at when we hire somebody? We look at their skills. What do we find them based on? Attitude. Right. So attitude is extremely important. So, and job fitting on the job comes from attitude, not so much from the skills. Skills are easier taught than attitude is. Attitude is the one to do it, skills is the how to. And that study showed that you outperform minimum of 2 to 1, regardless of somebody's skills, you outperform somebody 2 to 1 compared to somebody that's got the skills. So, attitude becomes a very, very important aspect of, getting production done, culture in the business, stuff like that.
I remember seeing a Simon Sinek clip where he was talking about some work he'd done with Navy SEALs, and he had like a 2x2 matrix where it was trust and ability.
Yeah, I've seen that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I saw that.
It was trust and ability, and basically, so which isn't quite the same as attitude, but it's kind of close, right? Yeah. And he said, give me the guy who I have super high trust, high trust and high ability is perfect, but I'll take high trust and low ability over low trust and high ability all day long, because I can work with that. Yeah. And I find the same thing in business. If I can find the person with the right attitude. So I had brought this guy on. It was actually for a relatively low-level job, just to help manage my Discord community at this company I was running at the time. And within 4 months, he was running my entire marketing team. And what I remember about that path so vividly was because I always do this when people come to work for me. I really want to genuinely understand what their career aspirations are. And he had said to me, I want to be a chief marketing officer. In my head, I'm thinking he's a 24-year-old kid. I'm thinking, I said, I could see in 8 to 10 years that could be possible. At the end of the day, he's now a chief marketing officer. He's 26. And the reason is because, again, it was just like, there was nothing I couldn't throw at this guy. I actually think it's, I think some of the AI stuff too is a bit of a game changer, because I think it lowers the level of required skill to do a lot of things. Not everything. Like, you want to build a bridge, you probably need an engineering degree. I don't want someone without an engineering degree building my bridge I'm driving a car over, but someone needs to learn how to write really good email, or come up with an email marketing strategy or social media strategy. Between hustle and AI, there's not a whole lot you couldn't figure out.
Yeah. Dude, I know very little about AI. I'm a little bit of a technophobe, I'm very touchy, feely, very, tactile type person. So AI, I don't really understand. What kind of experience do you have with AI? Do you think it's something that's going to affect business?
Oh my God.
I mean, it appears to be.
Do you know who Naval Ravikant is?
I do not.
So he's one of those few entrepreneurs that actually seemed like he's crazy successful. He was, he did his own thing. He made a bunch of money. Then he was an early investor in companies like Uber and Airbnb and Facebook. And so he's a gazillionaire. But he also has a happy marriage. He seems like he's a good dad. He seems like he's a happy, he just seems like a balanced guy. And someone was interviewing him, and he was talking about people saying, oh, AI is going to take your job. AI is not going to take your job. People that use AI are going to take the jobs from people that don't use AI.
Okay, that's interesting.
And I'll give you a couple of things. So, I'm working on a TED Talk that I'm going to do later this year. So what I did was, and by the way, thank you for your help on that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a great
So what I did was, I probably spent at least 30 hours coming up with my version of the TED Talk. I got input from people like you, and I was fairly happy with where it was. And then I said, let me just run this through. So I use Grok, which is the AI that's built into X, into Twitter. I said, let me just feed it into Grok and just say, make it more persuasive and compelling. That's the only guidance I gave it. Okay. 30 seconds later, whoop, there it was. I made a few tweaks, less than 10 minutes, to make it feel more like me. And then I asked my wife, I basically read both versions. And I didn't tell her anything about it. I said, I'm going to read you two versions. I didn't tell her anything about it. I said, I'm going to read you the first version, which is the one I wrote with input and so forth, that I felt pretty good about. And I said, when I was done, I said, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. She goes, it's an 8.5. Pretty good.
The one you wrote?
The one I wrote.
Got it.
I said, okay, now I'm going to read you the second one. Read her the second one. She said, I changed my mind. The 8.5's a 7. That's a 9. And literally, it sounded like me, just like me if I had a much better editor. And I did another example. So a bunch of years ago, Gladiator is one of my favorite movies. And I think there are a lot of really interesting leadership lessons. And leadership's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And so I wrote a pretty good article that I got a lot of positive feedback on, 6 leadership lessons from the movie The Gladiator. And I had, more recently, prompting from my daughter, I'd watched the Ted Lasso series and I really liked it. And so I just came up with the idea, I want to write another article like the Gladiator one, but about Ted Lasso. Now I'd probably spent probably 30 hours on my Gladiator article. I fed Grok my Gladiator article and said, write one about Ted Lasso in a similar tone to this. Done. 30 seconds. It was 90%. I had to change 10% of it. And it was done in less than an hour. It would have taken me 25 to 30 hours to do it. And I don't know that it would have been as good. So that's my experience with AI. It is blowing me away about, in terms of, it's just allowing me to accelerate what I do. And as an example, for my TED Talk applications, I had to come up with you have to do a 1-minute video and a 2-minute video of what your TED Talk's going to be. And so I said, so then I just gave it the TED Talk and said, write me a 1-minute script, write me a 2-minute script. And it did it. I made a few minor tweaks and it was done and it was really good.
And so help me understand that, because I truly don't understand AI. And I'm a little bit nervous of AI, and I don't know why. It's probably because I just don't understand it. But so does it do exactly what you want it to do? Do you have to feed it something, or it gives you something and then you edit it? Or a bit of both?
It depends on what you're asking it to do, right? You could be asking it to, let's be honest, there's no one today who's writing a term paper.
Yeah.
Right? There's no one's writing a term paper.
Yeah.
You're using AI to do it. So it depends. The more inputs you give it, the better it does.
Because it learns how you write them,
It learns how you can say, I wanted you to write it in my tone. Here's an article I wrote.
Yeah.
You can even say, make me sound more professorial, make me sound smarter, make me sound dumber.
Yeah.
You could give it whatever guidance you want. And it's amazing how, and what will happen is sometimes it won't get it right the first time. No, that's not quite what I was looking for. Do it more like this, whatever this is. And it's like the most coachable, genius you can imagine.
It's crazy.
It's scary.
I do not understand it, but I find it very fascinating. It seems to be something that's going to be taking the world, and the business world, and putting in a totally different trajectory. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and like I said though, like this 24 now 26-year-old kid who's now a chief marketing officer, I don't know that he could have been without AI, but he absolutely can do it now.
Yeah.
So and so my company's going to have a choice. Well, I could hire that guy who used to work at Procter and Gamble or wherever, and pay him $350,000 a year plus bonus plus equity, or this other guy who's going to be happy at 150 plus a little bit of equity and probably less than the other guy because he doesn't know how to negotiate for it, but that guy does. It's a very different landscape.
Yeah, I find it very fascinating. But can I ask you something? You said something about leadership. What do you think? Let's say somebody came down from space. They don't know what leadership is, and if you were to tell them what leadership was with one word, what would you call leadership? What would you say leadership is in a nutshell?
One word's tough.
One word.
If you put a gun to my head and I had to say one word, I would say service.
Okay, I like that.
So one word's tough though.
So here's what I've found and learned over years. Leadership is simply the ability to influence somebody. So think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Influence.
Yeah.
But you get two types of influence. You get positive influence and negative influence. One's based on persuasion, one's based on manipulation. Both forms of leadership. So here's a quick question. Who do you think, name a couple of great leaders that this world has seen?
Depends on your definition of great.
And that's a good observation.
I don't know that I have, because here's the problem. Without firsthand experience, I think it's a fool's errand to evaluate someone's leadership.
Okay.
That you haven't experienced yourself directly, because you don't want to believe anyone's press about anything. So you could look at someone like a Steve Jobs, and it's funny. I remember I was reading Elon Musk's and Steve Jobs' autobiographies simultaneously. And I would read like 2 chapters from one, then I'd read 2 chapters, and I would go back and forth. What struck me in reading Steve Jobs' biography, they're both written by the same guy, Walter Isaacson, right? Was that especially for Steve Jobs' first stint at Apple, he was a terrible business person. I mean, like one of the worst, the horrible business decision after horrible business decision, much better when he came back after he got fired and came back. But it was like, people talk about him as the greatest business leader, greatest, leader, innovator. And what I think he was really good at, I know he was really good at, was he's a real visionary. And the part of leadership he did exceptionally well was he gave people the vision of what they were going towards. But I don't think he was a great leader, at least by my definition. I think you have to be a servant leader to be a truly exceptional leader. And it can't be about just getting to a particular, again, it goes back to what I said before about depends on your definition of great. To me, if it's just about making money, that's not great. It's like if every person that you made money for, they made you rich, you made them rich, and not only that, but you made them better human beings and they made you a better human being, that's a great leader. And I think I don't know how you could evaluate that without experiencing them firsthand.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. But I do think still that influence thing, because most people will say, Churchill, Jesus Christ, Mother Teresa, etc. But nobody ever mentions Adolf Hitler, for example.
Right.
Great leader.
Right.
But, people think about great as moral leadership, and it's not really. It's just a great leader. Why? Because he had the ability to influence people. But his influence, was it positive or negative? It was more negative, more manipulation.
Right.
And I think that's what makes servant leadership different, is that it uses persuasion and positive leadership, as opposed to negative. Because you think about getting our kids, we lead our kids. But if I tell my kid, if you eat your food, we will give you some ice cream. Is that manipulation or is that persuasion?
It's bribery.
Yeah, and that's manipulation. We do it all the time.
I feel like bribery is a third category.
Yeah.
So here's how I define it. To me, bribery is a very clear, you do X, I give you Y. Very clear that I'm bribing you. Persuasion is I'm trying to get you to do something that's in your interest. Manipulation is I'm trying to get you to do something against your interest. I feel like there's 3 categories.
Okay.
So, I mean, leadership's a tricky one. Oh, I think people think of leadership as a tricky one. I actually think it's quite simple. You know, and what I find interesting is, because early, you know, very, very early in my career, when I was in my very early 20s, I was, you know, more of a taskmaster in terms of how I thought about leading and managing people until I had my sort of cancer misdiagnosis, which I know you know about. But it just pivoted me into being like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, even if you could be successful, it's a much happier way to travel through life, being decent to people, being helpful. Like, who doesn't feel good about being useful to other people? I think that being useful, nothing feels better than being useful. And it's funny, I had, I did this TED Talk thing to get on a TED Talk stage, and there's a whole bunch of other people that are involved in this whole speaker program. And I asked the person who was running this event, I said, oh, do you guys have a list of speaker bureaus? And they said, no, we don't. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went on to Grok and I said, give me the top 10 speaker bureaus. And there it was. It took me like a minute, right? And then I posted it to the community, and all these people were like, oh, thank you so much for putting that together, whatever. Again, I just did it like, well, there wasn't one. One was needed. I wanted to be useful, so I did it. And again, that's not why I did it. Someone reached out to me, thanked me, said, hey, are you part of the Florida, Speakers Association? Oh, you're not? There's an event next weekend. If you want, I'll drive you up. We can go together. Da, da, da. Like, I didn't even know there was one. And so now I'm benefiting from having done something that, again, which wasn't why I did it, but if you just travel through life trying to be useful, I just think so much
abundance
good comes
mentality.
to you. What's that?
Like having abundance mentality.
It is. I do think that, when you think about it too, like things, people that are more of a fear-based leader, which is the same as a scarcity mentality, right? It's like people that are like my way or the highway. Like, these are people that think that in order for them to win, someone else has to lose. So what's next for you? Like, because you're not, I know you do the Cryo conference, CryoCon once a year, and you're involved obviously in SENA. But what else is going on in Lars's world?
I'm trying to reinvent myself.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, But right now, there's CryoCon, putting a lot of time to CryoCon, and we're going to start putting a lot of time to SENA, growing the association. We should have grown that first, and then obviously the stores. Kelly and I do the stores together. We're redoing some of those stores. So,
right.
Hopefully we get, that going and back up at a better level than it is at the moment,
Sure.
It needs to be refreshed now. But yeah, that's probably the things I'm, looking at focusing on.
So I have a personal question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
How many children do you have?
4.
You have 4 children.
Yeah.
What ages?
28, 26, 21, and 17.
Okay, wow. So I just have one 25-year-old daughter. I can't. My mother-in-law, my second marriage, basically said she has 4 kids also, and she said she's only as happy as her least happy kid.
Yeah.
Which really struck me. So I could totally see that. But one of the things I think that's the hardest thing as a parent is how much suffering do you allow your child to experience? Because your knee-jerk is you don't want them to experience any suffering, but that's not good because you don't develop character if you don't have to, find your way through things. How do you think about that as a parent with 4 kids?
I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
Because as parents, we really love our kids, and it's the love that almost kills them. It's our love that holds them back, because we don't want to see them suffer. One of my favorite quotes is, as friction sharpens a pencil, so adversity sharpens a man. But here's the thing, what do we go through life? Trying to avoid adversity. But adversity and pain is the very thing where we learn, I mean, our brain, our subconscious brain's primary purpose is to avoid pain, to protect us from pain.
Right.
But, if we really understood the value of pain and going through painful activities, we would probably look to do the hardest things when we woke up in the morning. Hey, what's the hardest thing I can do? Because that's actually where the value is. Like lifting weight, obviously, you get sore, but that's where the growth is. So, I think the negative energy in life, wants you to relax, wants you to go the easy path, wants you to make more money so that you can, have an easier life. But I don't think, and that's what I've learned in my experience, is that, the easy life is not where the real value is, That's, I think society tries to sell you that, but,
Right.
it's not where the value is.
Well, there's a...
In hindsight sometimes, obviously,
Hindsight's funny that way. Did you ever watch any of the old Twilight Zone TV shows?
I used to when I was younger.
So there's the one that's black and white, so it's really old. Anyway, so this guy thinks that he's died and gone to heaven. He's at a casino, and every blackjack hand he hits 21, and every pretty girl laughs at every joke he says, and everything's perfect, right? And he realizes he's not in heaven, he's in hell.
Yeah.
Because there's no hardship.
Yeah.
He wins. It's no fun to win every hand in blackjack, right? It's no fun to have every girl laugh at a joke, even when it's not funny, And I thought another thing that made me...
But that's what makes it valuable, is the pain.
That's what, you have to have the yin and yang. You have to have...
You won't know sweet if you don't know bitter.
Yeah, my wife lost her father unexpectedly when she was 17. And they went from very affluent to dead broke in like 6 months. They had 3 restaurants. They lost all their restaurants. She went from driving a Mercedes to riding the bus in like 3 months. And she said, it's maybe the best thing that ever happened to her. She said, until she experienced true sadness, she wasn't able to appreciate happiness. And I remember it's funny when you remember back in 1983, I went to this wrestling camp. And it was the first time that I had ever done. One of the guys who ran the camp, he was an ex-Army Ranger, and he did mindfulness stuff, and I'd never done that stuff before. And he had this saying that he used to say over and over again, which is, "Pain is your ally." He said, the more pain you can experience, it's when you're in a wrestling practice and you're exhausted and you're in agony. He's like, you should get a big smile on your face. Because the more you experience and the more comfortable you get with that agony, the more you're going to win. The more you're going to be on the top of the podium with the medal. And he was absolutely right. Pain is your ally if you can reframe it as what it is, which is building you up. It's not tearing you down. So.
Yeah, it's definitely the hardships where the value is. I talk about owning 27 companies. But I think about, 11 of those were absolute failures. Which ones do you think I learned the most lessons on?
Those 11.
100%. Because, you can identify what you did wrong and fix it. But sometimes when you're successful, you don't know what you did, because sometimes you do it by talent. And talent can be a curse,
Yeah.
Because you're given it. You didn't have to work for it. And I think that sometimes, and you see this with superstars, sometimes the guys that aren't that good at, on a team that have to really work for it to be on the team and to be a top sportsman, to become the superstars, where the guys with the talent, they fade very quickly, because I think you reach, your talent has a ceiling, and once you reach it, you can't break through because you don't know how you got there. I think about, I worked for a company called Profiles International, and they did psychological profiling, and we sold these tools for job fit. And I became the rookie of the year, and I'll never forget, I went to their conference, and I can't remember the guy's name. His name was Sam, his first name. I'm trying to remember what his last name was. But anyway, Sam was my mentor, and he was the guy that looked after me, on the sales side. And he called me up impromptu at the conference, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to ask Lars up as our, top rookie of the year to show us how he sells." And they did like a mock-up sale. And, I wanted the earth to swallow me up, because when I got up there, I couldn't sell. I couldn't fake selling. And he did it on purpose. He says, because if you don't consciously know what you're doing and you do it purely by talent, you don't really know what you're doing. Why? Because it's talent driving it. You're just doing it because it's a God-given gift. But if there's something you have to do that you had to learn, and you learn by bumping our heads, it has more value, and that's where the superstars come in. That's where we become a superstar at something we do. Why? Because we know it becomes a practice. It becomes an absolute skill of something that we do.
That's really interesting. I saw an interview with Kobe Bryant. The guy was such a sad thing that he died. He was such an amazing guy, but he was talking about how much easier it got when he got to the NBA. He said, because, all these kids, they were great in, middle school and in high school and in college. And then they got, drafted in the NBA, and most of these kids came from nothing. And so they finally had money. And he goes, they all take their foot off the gas. They all, because they arrive, they've made
Yeah,
it.
you lose that hunger.
Yeah, and he said for him, it was the opposite. He was just like,
Really?
oh man, now I'm going to go harder. He goes, it was like taking candy from a baby.
Yeah.
Was his comment about that. I thought that was really interesting.
So made him a great, I suppose, then.
It really did. Yeah, it really. So I think Michael Jordan too, like, getting cut from his team in high school or whatever.
Yeah.
No wonder the guy had a chip on his
That's
shoulder.
what I was thinking about when I was thinking about an example.
Yeah. Well, so Lars, again, I can't congratulate you enough on the
appreciate
CryoCon.
that.
Really, really, and honestly, the fact that I got to play even a tiny part of it was really
you. I
special for
appreciate
me. And I hope
Your
I
talk
can.
was great, and happy birthday.
Yeah, thank
it's
you
your
so
birthday
much.
today.
Yeah,
happy birthday.
It
I
is.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Lars.
Thank you for everything
Appreciate
you did for us at CryoCon.
Yeah, it was my
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.